Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the season finale of the Keep Your Stride Mental Wellness Limited Series. And this series is focused on healing, gifts, clarity. So the season finale is about caring, hidden costs, which is focusing on compassion fatigue, which extends beyond different demographics. And joining me tonight as a compassion fatigue expert and licensed mental health counselor is Natasha Darkangelo. So let me introduce Natasha to you. Natasha Darkangelo is a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida, Oregon, and Washington, a Florida qualified supervisor, a nationally certified counselor, a certified clinical trauma professional, and a certified compassion fatigue professional, a compassion fatigue educator, and a certified forward-facing professional resilience coach and consultant. So many things. I'm
There's
Michelle.
a lot of letters behind my name.
Yes. And right now, Natasha is the clinical director for Lakewood Regional Treatment Center and the owner of Darkangelo Counseling and Consulting LLC. Our previous experience includes 15 years as an educator, an inpatient psychiatric setting, community mental health, private practice, and mental health tech. I am Michele Beatty. I am a professional development strategist for the past 10 years. And my journey to keeping your stride grew to include mental wellness and going to therapy. And that came from me just taking my own lessons that I was sharing with others from career coaching. My professional development journey started back in working in career services. And just through the years, I've gone on to just be a student of my own work, do one-on-one coaching, career coaching, work with different organizations to establish professional development, career development programs. And now I just continue on just encouraging people. And I just added professionals like yourself. And I just added the whole Keep Your Stride initiative because mental wellness includes that. In order for us to be top performers, in order for us to make sure that we don't have any blockers, that can include anxiety, stress, career grief. There's so many different things. Just, embracing that. And so I just want to share resources here and just let everyone know, there are options to help you navigate that. And some of it's a reminder, some of it's new, some of you may be on the fence, but this is just a resource for you to ponder and think about and decide what could be a right fit for you moving forward, returning. However, it's just to share to help you keep your stride to evolve into your professional best. Natasha, do you have anything you want to kick off the show with and share with the listeners or those who are watching?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that you do best is shine the light on we are whole people. And so I think that we tend to view ourselves in these boxes and we try to compartmentalize like this is home and this is work and this is school. And, it would be nice if they were neat and separated like that. But the truth is that our mental health is very closely related to our careers, our jobs, and a lot of times those things can feed into each other. Generally, the better our mental health is, the better we're doing and feeling at work. And if work isn't going so well, it tends to impact us negatively. And I just don't think that that's something that people necessarily realize the connection between, or they maybe try to deny that there's a connection there. So I really appreciate you shining the light on the importance of that connection and how taking care of your mental health really is going to help you with whether it's a job or a career just to get better at whatever it is that you're doing or get you to a place where you're making healthier decisions for yourself. Sometimes it's a change that you need to make, but you're kind of getting in your own way.
Oh, 100%. And I just want to also share special kudos to Natasha. She has been on this journey with me when I started this initiative. I reached out and I'm like, hey, this is something that I want to do. And she has stuck with me through the ebbs and the flows and everything that goes along with helping get this message out and encouraging this. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you, Natasha, for being a true supporter of this from the very beginning. So I just want to say
Thank you.
thank you.
It's been my
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah, I totally enjoy working with you.
Same.
Okay, let's start off. Explain to us what is compassion fatigue?
So compassion fatigue is it's an umbrella of symptoms that people who are professional caregivers can tend to struggle with. The most widely accepted definition in the field was coined by Dr. Charles Figley back in 1995. And there's pretty much two ingredients. It requires burnout plus secondary trauma. So it is a state of exhaustion and dysfunction, biologically, psychologically, and socially, as a result of prolonged exposure to compassion stress and everything that comes along with it. So it's a really fancy therapy way of saying if you fall into a caregiver category, if you are an educator, a physician, a nurse, a mental health professional, law enforcement, first responders, hospice worker, like those kinds of things, you are susceptible to developing symptoms of compassion fatigue as a result of the work that you do. But what oftentimes happens with folks in caregiving roles, and this is what I hear over and over again as I do presentations, is people tend to think that it's their fault, right? So if I'm working with a nurse and they're just feeling drained, they don't want to go into work anymore, maybe they don't have the empathy for their patients anymore. And they're just kind of looking at their patients and thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, I can't deal with this for the next 12 hours. A lot of times we turn inward and we're, blaming ourselves. There's something wrong with me. I chose the wrong field. I'm failing. I spent all of this money to get into this career. And the truth is that when you're in those kinds of careers, it is not impossible that the work of caring is going to take its toll on you. But a lot of people aren't familiar with the term compassion fatigue. And so they tend to think, well, obviously I chose the wrong field. I wasted thousands of dollars getting this degree, and I need to, run off and be goofy on a Disney cruise and have that be my career. But the fact of the matter is, that may not be the answer, right? If you aren't able to kind of take a look within and name what's going on and then get some help for what's going on, even if you change jobs, those symptoms are going to follow you into the next job. And oftentimes that's where folks tend to find me is, I switched hospitals or I switched schools, and yet I'm continuing to struggle with these things. So it's kind of an umbrella of symptoms that caregivers are susceptible to.
I love that you shared that. Sometimes it's hard to even recognize. You think it's a part of the sacrifice, not
Yes.
realizing you don't need to make that a part of the sacrifice that you're making.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I love talking about compassion fatigue is because it was such an eye opener for me when I did my training, because I was able to look back at points in my professional career where I was like, oh, so I was neck deep in compassion fatigue and I had no idea because they didn't teach me about it when I was learning how to become a teacher. And honestly, they didn't teach me about it when I was learning how to become a licensed mental health counselor. So, we're really doing folks in these caregiving fields a disservice, especially because, there's always a shortage of nurses. There's always a shortage of educators. There's always a shortage of mental health professionals. To me, it just makes sense that we would help educate people so that they can get to a better place with things.
Does compassion fatigue apply to ourselves when caring for ourselves in the midst of trauma or challenge?
I don't know that it necessarily falls under the umbrella of compassion fatigue, because part of it would have to be that you're in that caregiving role. I think a lot of times, though, people don't recognize how much their own trauma plays into things. And this is another one of those, we don't necessarily know the connection between our work and our mental health, right? It's not that you're doing anything wrong, it's just knowledge that you may not have. There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score, and there's lots of research out there on the connection between trauma and how it impacts our bodies. So if you had an incredibly traumatic childhood and you grew up in a home where there was just lots of negative stuff going on, whether or not you consciously think about it every day, that stuff continues to live on in your nervous system and it impacts how you navigate your universe. So let's say that you grew up in a household where your caregivers were frequently yelling at each other, right? That's something that I encounter often with clients. So if you're, going out to Target one day and there's two people in the Target parking lot just screaming at each other, you may find yourself having a panic attack. And you're in the emergency room. You have no idea how you ended up with a panic attack, but it's because your nervous system remembered growing up in a household with caregivers that were always yelling at each other and knew that that was unsafe. So even though you don't know who these people in the Target parking lot were, you've never seen them before, you'll never see them again. It triggered your own panic response in that moment. And so it's really important that people take the time to understand that nobody's saying you're doing it on purpose. Nobody's saying that you're doing it consciously, but your nervous system continues to hold on to those things. Honestly, it's in its attempt to keep you alive, right? If you don't learn that I don't know, bees are dangerous, and you get stung by a bee, and you walk face first into a beehive, 5 years down the road, you haven't learned anything. You've put yourself in life-threatening danger, right? So it's the same thing, but we again look at ourselves as failures. What's wrong with me? That happened 30 years ago. I should be over it by now. And mentally, you may want to think that you've moved on, but what your nervous system remembers and is trying to protect you from is a whole other category. So, my goal, I hope, is that people give themselves the space and understanding that if something is impacting you present day, it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. And it doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that your nervous system is trying its best to keep you alive with the knowledge that you've gained on whatever time you've been on this planet. And if you learn to work with your nervous system, you'll have a much higher quality of life.
Thank you for explaining the difference between the two, because it
Mhm.
could easily be perceived to be interchangeable.
Mhm.
So thank you for taking the time to explain that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I know you've studied. I know that you have put a lot of effort into this. So how has your understanding? You touched upon it a little bit, but I just want to go back to how has your understanding and approach to compassion fatigue evolved over your career, and what are some of the key lessons that you've learned?
So I had like heard about compassion fatigue, and I thought that like, oh, that's like when nurses get tired of what they're doing. I didn't realize there was a whole definition and there were actual symptoms and things like that. But I think honestly the biggest insight that I've gained is that I have struggled with compassion fatigue. I really did not know that until I set out on this training journey. It wasn't something I intended to discover about myself. I'm glad that I did, though. I think that hopefully it puts me in a place where I'm better able to help people because I really do know where they're coming from. And I think that the biggest thing that I have learned, the most impactful thing that I have learned is even when I'm in a stressful work environment, one that is triggering some of my past traumas and causing my nervous system to be on fire, I still have the ability to control my panic response. And that's not something that I knew before I took these trainings. So last year, I made a pretty big career move. And for the first time in my professional life, took me over 30 years, I actually decided to leave a job because I was choosing to, and not because I was running out of fear. Every other job change I've had has been because I was running out of fear. Now, because of my training, I recognize that I was struggling with compassion fatigue in my previous position. So I decided to leave because it was no longer suiting me. And knowing what I now know about compassion fatigue, I was able to choose what my next position was, not in a space of panic, but because I was choosing my next role based on something that was going to align with my own personal goals, that was going to help me be fulfilled. And let me tell you, when you're actually making that choice as opposed to doing it from a place of fear, it is a game changer. And so I would encourage folks, if any of this is resonating with you, do a little bit of research. Dr. Eric Gentry's work, I have his book sitting right here, on professional resilience. It really is transformative. And my favorite thing about it is that it's empowering and it helps people be able to see that even in a hospital where the administration is treating you terribly, even in a school where you're working with just traumatized kids day after day after day, you can still find fulfillment in the work that you do. You just need a little bit of help to get there.
I get that. And thank you for your transparency.
Hmm.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I know that you touched upon misconceptions just a bit that you've encountered. So, what would you like to clarify or address a little bit further about misconceptions about compassion fatigue?
I think the biggest one that's out there is people get told this is what you signed up for. So for a brief shining moment back in March of 2020, we all loved nurses. I remember watching videos of people in New York City who would stand out on their balconies and like bang on pots and pans at the time of shift change, right? And we loved nurses and we appreciated educators. And it didn't last very long, unfortunately. And I think that the biggest misconception out there is that if you get yourself into the caregiving field, if you decide that you want to be a nurse or a veterinarian or a teacher or a licensed mental health counselor or a social worker, you're signing up to get burned out. And I say nonsense. That doesn't have to be part of the package. And that's not what we should be telling people. I mean, what a horrible message. Like, yeah, so you're going to get burned out eventually. Happened to me, it'll happen to you. And that's what we tend to teach the folks coming up behind us, which I think is unfair. It's also untrue. We need to encourage people to keep themselves healthy and sustainable in these fields because quite honestly, those of us that are drawn to caregiving fields, we do it because we want to help other people. I mean, that's our motivation, right? So why would our message to those people be, don't worry, you'll get burned out too. You'll get over it. You'll stop caring about them eventually. I don't think that that should be part of what we're telling people. I think we should be encouraging people to take care of themselves and learn about this stuff at the beginning of their career rather than teaching them that, well, it's only a matter of time before you burn out and end up doing something else anyway.
That is that's like top tier, a top tier share because it's true. That applies to so many people. Well, you signed up for it. Well,
Hmm.
what if I want a different experience?
Absolutely.
I'm responsible for cultivating a different experience, which might include quietly dismissing such opinions.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And I would encourage people to think about the way that they're speaking to the people that come up behind them, right? So if you're a teacher that's maybe been in the field for 20 years, think about how you're talking to that first year teacher that's down the hall. If you're a nurse that's been working on your floor for 15 years, think about how you're talking to your fellow nurse that maybe just graduated a few months ago. And those messages really do stick with the people that are coming up behind you. And if you're in a position where you can cultivate and encourage and sow seeds for longevity, um, I mean, why wouldn't you? We're never going to not need educators. We're never going to not need nurses. And I think that our goal should be trying to encourage people whose heart is in the right place.
No, I agree, and thank you for that encouragement to the masses. Just
Mhm.
encourage, because we also have friends and associates and colleagues that when they're going through that, we can maybe give gentle reminders or consider giving gentle reminders of how we're phrasing things. So thank you for
Yeah.
that shift, that perspective shift. So
Mhm.
Natasha, what strategies or practices do you find most effective in managing and preventing compassion fatigue?
So I think honestly the first one is knowledge. If you don't know about it, then you can't do anything about it. So there's a great tool that's free. I like free, called the ProQual. It stands for Professional Quality of Life. So the website is PROQOL. So it's proqual.org. And there's a free assessment that you can use on there. I've done it with clients in session before. It doesn't take more than 5-10 minutes. And it goes through 30 different questions, and it just asks what your experience has been over the last 30 days. And so, again, if any of this is resonating with you and you're like, I don't know, maybe just take the ProQual, see where you're at, establish a baseline for yourself. And kind of see where things stand with you. Or if you're in a position where you manage folks, then it's a good idea for you to kind of get an assessment of where your folks are at. Knowledge is power. And so the first thing that you need to do is give yourself an assessment of what's going on with you. The second thing that I would encourage you to do is look up Dr. Eric Gentry's work. Again, it's Gentry. He's amazing. He's been researching this stuff for over 25 years. And he has a lot of resources available, again, for free online. He's got a YouTube channel where you can watch his videos. There's another great video that his colleague, Jenny Brackman, does, and it's called Tools for Hope. And you can just search for that on YouTube. It's about a 40-minute watch. But education really is the key. Get an assessment of where you're at, learn a little bit more about what it's all about. If you're looking for more resources, folks are more than welcome to reach out to me. You can send me an email. I'm happy to send you some links or some literature. But do a little bit of research, like Google compassion fatigue, see what comes up when you look it up. But that's what I find is kind of the missing piece. Folks may have heard about compassion fatigue in passing, but they're not really sure what it means. They don't know that it's a thing that can be assessed. And if you don't have those two pieces in place, you're not going to be able to help yourself alleviate some of the suffering that you may be experiencing.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with the watchers or listeners?
Absolutely. So I say this all the time, that it's okay to not be okay. Even if you are law enforcement, even if you are a first responder, even if you've been working as a physician for 30 years and you've been in the ER and you've seen everything, there is no shame in seeking out professional help. There's no shame in sitting down with somebody who has training. There are those of us who are licensed clinicians that specialize in compassion fatigue. You're not the only one. I promise you, you're not the only one that's struggling. And there are people like me in the mental health field who are standing by, who are ready, willing, and able to listen and to help. So if you're even questioning whether or not you should sit down and talk with somebody, at least do an intake appointment and see what that's like for you. I'm not saying it'll be easy, but I am saying that help is available out there and you shouldn't feel alone, and you definitely shouldn't feel ashamed.
All facts. All facts. I also want to share that Natasha is an international speaker that has presented on various topics, including destigmatizing mental health care, compassion fatigue, and effective techniques for working with teens. She operates from a culturally humility perspective and is an ally of the LGBTQIA plus community. So if you're looking forward to working with Natasha, please reach out to her. She is especially passionate about working with clients who are struggling with trauma and anxiety. So, Natasha, can you share with everyone how to get in touch with you if they would like to work with you?
Sure. So I'm happy to give presentations. I've done trauma-informed care before. If you're thinking your team may need to hear about compassion fatigue, my site is Natasha, Natasha LMHC, like licensed mental health counselor.com. And there's a link right on the website for folks to email me directly. And again, happy to answer questions, send out resources. There's also some links on there to some articles that I've written, some podcasts that I've guested on, so you can get an idea of some of the things that I'm able to talk about. But would encourage folks to definitely reach out for more information and get themselves some help.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Natasha. And I'm Michele Beatty, creator of Keep Your Stride. And you can listen to other episodes interviews that Natasha's done with me at careertipper.com as well. And you can find me on LinkedIn, under Michele Beatty, and then Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube under Keep Your Stride. So thank you so much for joining us. Natasha, did you have any final shares before we log off?
No, just thank you again for the platform. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I hope that this is your sign from the universe to get some help.
Thank you. We look forward to more dialogue with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.